think we're good to go. So welcome. Today I'm going to give an introduction to Microsoft Power Apps, explain what they are, hopefully explain what you can do with them, and show you what they look like. There's a couple of different types. I'll show you what they can look like in action. So just a very quick, one thing I should mention is that this session is being recorded. If you post any comments, questions, they'll be private. They won't show up in the recording. Please submit questions. I'll answer them as I go through. And then when the session's finished, the system will send you an automatic link so you can watch the recording again or show your friends, etc. Right, so my company, Solutions Shared, we've been around for about 13 years. What we primarily focus on these days is building business solutions for our clients. It was originally based around Microsoft Dynamics CRM, which is called Dynamics 365 these days. But more recently, the last year or two, we've also been doing that in Microsoft Power Apps. And as I go through, I'll explain there is actually a relationship between Power Apps and Dynamics CRM, as it was called. Personally, I've done Dynamics CRM probably for too long, since 2008, when once upon a time it was called CRM4. Right. So, Microsoft Power Apps. So if you were to look at the Microsoft marketing information, you undoubtedly bump into something that talks about a no-code, low-code development platform where you can create Power Apps. They even talk about the concept of a citizen developer. So think of that as a power user who would make their own apps rather than perhaps someone within the company. But in reality, some of them are really quite complicated and you'd probably need some external help like ourselves. The no-code part is the fact that a lot of it's done through an editor, a graphical editor online. You don't have to go and write any software to achieve an awful lot. There are places where you might need to, but you can do an awful lot without writing any code. There are essentially two types of Power App. There's what Microsoft chose to call a Canvas app. It's primarily targeted at phone and app. They tend to be single task oriented, for one job. Some of that has just changed in the last week, and I'll show you that in a minute. They don't always have their own storage. It used to be that maybe you connected them to a SharePoint list, and that would be the storage for it. The other major type of Power App is a model-driven Power App. This is essentially like a build your own business application toolkit. It can be very small or it can be very, very large. I mean, you can build an enterprise class business application from a model-driven Power App. And really, it's what they've done is they've taken the maker tools from Dynamics CRM and made them available without the pre-built apps that they would license themselves. So you get the tools, but you don't get Dynamics 365 for sales, for example. What that means is you can build something that meets your own business needs, but the ongoing licensing is a fraction of the cost. Right. This graphic here, I just thought I'd pop this up to show a bit about the timeline of Power Apps. So, once upon a time, we had Microsoft CRM, Dynamics CRM, and then they changed the branding to 365. But underneath it, we've always had this, what we would class as the database layer, the platform layer. And what they have done more recently is when they added Power Apps, they took the stuff that sat under Dynamics 365 and moved some of it to make model-driven Power Apps. And what they've done just recently, literally, it was released last week, is they've actually taken some of that functionality and exposed it in Microsoft Teams so you can build Teams apps. And I'll show you some of those shortly. Another way of looking at this is that we've got the database layer. They've changed the name last week as well. It's called DataFlex. So both Dynamics 365, so the bits, sales, etc. that Microsoft built, Power Apps, build your own business application. They sit on a database and platform layer termed DataFlex Pro. What they released last week is Teams apps, which sit on a subset, basically, of this full data platform. And as this graphic shows, Teams apps are basically included. If you've got Teams in your Office 365 subscription, then you can make Teams apps. Whereas if you want to make Power Apps, these are obviously US prices, $10 for a single app. I've got a pricing table later on that will show you how that is in pounds. And Dynamics 365, you would license what Microsoft built. While in that last graphic I showed 3 types, there's actually really 4, I put purchase options here, 4 options for Power Apps. They actually give you some free stuff when you just license Office 365. So you get you can think of it as a free Canvas app taster, where you can do bits of a Power App, uses the Canvas app editor within SharePoint, for example, and I'll give you an example of that. And then the Teams apps, they are actually really just Canvas apps again, but they're basically embedded, built to be run inside Teams, but because they sit on DataFlex, they've got a proper database. So that means that they will scale. So something built on a SharePoint list, for example, it's got a limitation as to how many records you can add, how performant it will be. Whereas a Teams app built on top of the proper database layer, quite frankly, it would scale to millions of records quite happily, not a problem. And then you've got, full Canvas apps, primarily phone and tablet, but you can embed them in other systems. So you can embed them in SharePoint, in Dynamics CRM, in websites, etc. And then finally, the 4th type is this model-driven Power App. Very much built on the foundations of Dynamics 365, but really you can use them to build full-scale business applications, which quite frankly could, it's purely down to what you can imagine you want to create. And I've got 2 examples to show you. So, time for a demo. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat. All right, let me pop the screen share on. Share. There we go. And if I jump over to here. Okay, so the first thing I was going to show is that I'm sat inside SharePoint here. This is an old SharePoint site that I don't really use very often. But what I've got here, this is a SharePoint list. Once upon a time was used to track some software licenses. It's really out of date. So if I wanted to edit an item, I get this little form over here, and I can do edit all, and it comes out like this. It's okay, but maybe you want to move things around or highlight stuff, and it's a bit kind of black and white. So what you can do is you can customize with Power Apps. Now this takes a little bit of time to load. It's doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Come on. It will get there. I did this earlier. Here we go. Here we go. Right. So it's got a welcome. You can follow through and get some advice on how to build your thing. But what it's done is it's opened up the Canvas app editor, and it's given me my little form, and I can now play around. I can drag fields around, I can swap them around. I can even do things like, I can change all the colors if I really wanted to. Now about to demonstrate how I'm not a great designer. So I could just go, I've made some really not very pretty edits, but I can go back to SharePoint. Oh, come on. And my not very pretty form changes are there. So what I've effectively done is I've used an embedded Canvas app inside SharePoint to tidy up the form. Now, given a bit of time, you can do an awful lot here. You could really improve the usability of your SharePoint site or sites for both, documents and SharePoint lists. You can add functions like you would in Excel. So you could add field validation and lots of nice little things. But that was just a very quick example there. The next level of Power Up I mentioned earlier was an app in Teams. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to quick look to see if right. So what I've got is I've got a demo team site here. Now, the ability to make Teams apps was just released last week, so I've not really had time to practice with it that much. But Microsoft provide some sample apps. So what I did is I spun up a couple of those. So I have here a thing that calls itself Asset Checkout. If I just close my sidebar, there we go. So a sample app Microsoft provide. You can pick a laptop and you can basically check it out, say who it's for, how many days you want to reserve it. Very simple. So it's very much, they've built a little data model in this Dataflex database that holds this information, and they've built the forms on top, etc. I'm sure there's more to it, but it's just a little demo app. Another one, similar sort of thing, is a help desk app. Let me just maximize that so it fits on my screen. So you can see, different types of tickets, new tickets. So effectively, this has been built in that Canvas editor by doing a number of different screens and piecing them together so that when you click a link, it opens up the next one and so on. So if you want to add another service ticket, you can create a ticket. It's as simple as that. So, there's an awful lot more you could do. The great beauty about this is it's embedded inside Teams. So it'll work in Teams on my desktop. It'll work in Teams on my tablet. I'm sure it would also work in Teams on my phone. Obviously, the screen's going to be a bit smaller. But anywhere Teams goes, this will go with you. So you can achieve quite a lot with these. And in reality, they're free if you've got a Teams license. I mean, you could build it yourself, or you could reach out to, your IT support company or a Dynamics partner like us, if you want to build something a lot more complicated. The next level up is really the Canvas app. Now, to be honest, I don't really have an example right here now, but effectively, let me come back here. shouldn't have closed it last time. So really back in the Canvas ad editor, I mean, admittedly, this is for the form inside SharePoint, but this could easily be a form on a mobile phone. And you could have multiple forms that all link to each other. So you could easily build, an app that's maybe used from phone or tablet. It can connect to lots of data sources, such as SharePoint, even other systems. One of the things that Power Apps in general provide are lots of connectors. I forget how many there are. It could be like over 300 by now. Connectors to to database systems, to other things from Microsoft, but also to systems from other vendors. So you could easily have a Power App that maybe displays data from another application you use and allows you to push stuff back into it by using a connector to join the two together. Right, I'm just going to quickly stop sharing while I just swap some stuff over here. Right. Okay, let me just share my screen again. There we go. Okay, so what I'm now going to show you are some model-driven apps. Now, to be honest, these are the main things that Solutions Shared, us as a company, we tend to focus on because of our history in Dynamics CRM. The scale of what you can build here, it's the sky's the limit, basically. You can build something really small, or you can build a full application that, quite frankly, runs your entire company. You could build the sales and marketing stuff that's not there out the box. You could build operational stuff, customer service, you name it. A great use for Power Apps would be if you've got legacy systems. Something, let's face it, I do know some people have still got Microsoft Access hanging around. All of that could be replaced and built as a model-driven Power App. Other older systems as well. When we onboard people to Dynamics, we often find, a database system here, a bunch of spreadsheets, all of that stuff could be pulled into a Power App. So I've got two examples. The first one, let's just call it, we'll call it an, sports activity tracker. Really simple. So first glance, we've got some dashboards. But all this really has, it is really quite simple. It's got a place to record sporting activities. It's got a little form. There's a database that sits under this. Some of these are like lookup fields. It records different routes. It's got a different editor. This editor works well on the phone. That's why that's there, and so on. And then, it puts it in dashboards. Over here, you can show charts. Okay, that's showing too much data. But a key thing to note is that the system this runs in, it's effectively the platform that sits under Dynamics CRM. But you start with very little and you build everything yourself. But what you do get is you get all of the platform integrations. You get all of the export to the Excel, the ability to import tools, run reports, a whole charts. You can make charts with just a couple of button clicks. It doesn't take any writing of software. So admittedly, this is quite simple, but this entire thing, it can be a lot bigger. I have not written a single line of code, so no programming required. It was all done through the editor. If we look at the editor, this is the editor over here. If I go into, we do use a concept called solutions. It's a way of packaging up changes. This is a big long list of all the things in my app, but Microsoft calls a different type of record an entity. Here are all the lists. The list of this isn't in my I'm looking at the wrong app. Training log solutions. Come on, there we go. These are the things of app. It really is quite simple, not a lot. But you know, you can do things. If I go into that, I can go into my form. I can come in, and you get this. You know, what you see is what you get. Form editor. You can drag fields from the side. You can move things around. So, I mean, Microsoft would talk about a citizen developer doing it. To be honest, to build anything of a decent size, you really need to know what you're doing. But you know, someone that's a good power user, certainly maybe a technical person, could achieve quite a lot. Depends how much time they have on their hands. Whereas, you know, we do this day in, day out, so we can build much bigger, much more complex systems. So let me just come out of that one. I'll pop over to my other Power App. So this is a system that came. We kind of built something similar for a client, and I've kind of cobbled together bits of that and a few other changes. So this is effectively a system about servicing cars, let's face it. It doesn't really have anything to do with sales in it, though that could be added. That could sit alongside this. But, you know, it's got the concept of accounts and contacts. I've actually only added one contact myself. But then what we've got, because we service cars, for example, we can have a list of cars. And then we've got all the data that we can add for a car. Now, oh, I didn't save it. So in this system, the idea is you bring your car in for a visit to the workshop, a workshop visit. So I have added a workshop visit for, I just picked this one at random. It's got information who owns it. What I would do is I define a number of jobs for the car. So, you know, I don't know. I really know not a lot about cars. So all of this, you know, rich, picking stuff from drop-down lists, all the different data fields, that's the sort of thing that you would add in the data model of the model-driven Power App. And that, you know, that's what we do day in, day out. So I've added a job. Then what I might want to do is send an estimate to the client. So I've actually got one I made here, but it's the same, you know, because I'm making the estimate from the workshop visit, it pre-populates a lot of the information, you know, and I don't really have to fill in that much. I pop over to one I made earlier. So on this, we've built it so that each estimate can have a set of jobs, maybe some parts, and maybe some other charges, storage, etc. So I came in earlier and added these jobs, but I could add another existing job, pop that in there. There we go. Now, when I put this demo together, there is actually some code sitting underneath this, and I haven't enabled all of that. So what it should do, if I'd enabled all the code, it would basically calculate the jobs using the day rates. It would work out, you know, the job subtotal, the parts, the charges, do the VAT based on having picked a sales tax type. The system supports, you know, it was originally built for US and UK, different tax rates, and it would do all of that. And then in the case of a lot of clients, we would use something like a document generation add-on to actually generate the invoice and automatically send it out to the client. I haven't got that here in my demo. When it comes to, you know, the client says go ahead, we can build time reports. Time reports could be, we could build a little time report recorder within the Power App. To be honest, that could actually be done in either a Canvas app or in here, and staff could basically record time from their phone from a tablet. I've just added some time entries, and then the way this particular system works is that you generate an invoice, similar way to how you do an estimate. And again, it's got a similar structure. You know, if I had my code properly enabled, it would do the roll-ups. You add jobs. The way you add jobs is slightly different. I'll show you that in a second. You can add parts and other charges. Now, the way this thing works is it takes, so this required custom code, this part over here. This takes all of the jobs for this workshop visit and brings out the job and then all of the time reports below it. And then what it lets the user do is you can come in and say, well, this job, I'm going to mark it as complete. Or, you know, I want to invoice, I haven't enabled some of my code, individual time reports, but leave the main job open. What you can do is it pulls the text from here into here. You can update this, and this is the description that actually gets pulled through to the client's invoice, again, using document generation. So, you know, this is a relatively complex model-driven Power App, but certainly, you know, it's for a workshop. You could build one that was for anything, and you could easily add sales functionality along the side. You could either build that yourself in the Power App, or you know, this would also work alongside Dynamic CRM if you wanted to make use of that. But there's obviously a cost to using Dynamic CRM as well. But I'm just going to pop back to my slides for a second. Just very quickly here, I wanted to talk about the pricing of Power Apps. So in effect, you know, obviously the stuff you can do in Office, you know, inside SharePoint, it does show up in other places as well through the other apps in Office 365. You get that free with your Office 365 subscriptions. You can do a fair bit. Now we have, as of last week, we've got Teams apps, which look really quite exciting. It's nice the fact that you can build a Canvas app that sits inside Teams. You can have multiple apps inside the same team. I would expect that to really take off, you know, straight away. As more and more people are using Teams, well, just in general, but also for working remotely, it's a great way to build an app. You stick it in a team, instantly everyone has access to it. And again, they're free if you've got Teams. You will at some point hit a limitation there where, you know, there's only so much you can do with it. And that's where you may need to fall down into taking out a paid license for either a Canvas app or a model-driven app. They're both actually priced the same way. They have this bizarre thing, they call it a per app subscription, which actually lets you have two apps. £7.50 per user per month, or if a user is actually going to use more than one app, or more than two apps, I guess, they can have unlimited for £30. There is, I haven't put it here actually, there is also the ability to add a Power Apps portal to let external users get access to a subset of what's in a model-driven app. So you could open that up. It was just open it up to like partners, you know, clients, etc. You could have a client portal, that sort of thing. It's got different licensing as well. Key benefits. I mean, one of the key thing really is the fact that you can build apps from small ones up to, you know, enterprise size scale relatively quickly. You know, it's not back in the days of having to write software for 6 months, you know, to get anything. You don't have to write any code to make the forms, to make the whole shell that everything sits inside. It's just all drag and drop. The system's got workflows. It's got lots of other little, it's like a box of Lego. It's got other bits that you don't have to write code for. It makes it much, much quicker. There are definitely bits where you write code. I would say in our more complicated setups, maybe it's 80% no code, 20% bits of code here and there, usually for advanced stuff inside forms or integrations with third-party systems. All of the Power Apps, Canvas, model-driven, they're basically mobile, and I guess that means remote working enabled by default. They work on your PC, they work on your tablet, your phone. You don't have to do anything to change it, it just works. Model-driven apps, I mean, they're really, you can build highly scalable business applications. Ideal for new systems, but also, I personally think, a great tool for replacing legacy systems that you've got floating around that, as your business grows, they become an absolute pain in the butt. Also, now that we're all working more remotely, if you're having to connect into those systems via VPN, life would be much easier if they're moved to a cloud-based Power App system. You don't have to log in with a VPN again. A lot easier. So, overall, I would say that using Power Apps, you can really drive up the efficiency, consistency, and productivity of your company. Definitely. I guess one thing I would mention is, obviously, if I could pop back to the licensing. So the apps I showed, they were built as Power App, the bigger ones, model-driven Power Apps. They can be licensed at $7.50 a month. They could also include sales functionality. If you were to license Dynamics 365 Sales, it's £71.60 a month per user. So while it comes with a lot of pre-built functionality, the ongoing licensing is approximately 10 times the price. You could build most of that in a Power App. It would take a bit of time to build, admittedly, but depending on the number of users, there's definitely a break-even point where not that many months after go live, you've made back what you would have spent on licensing with a longer build time, definitely. And now when we talk to new prospects, I have to explain to them, do you do Dynamics 365? Do you do a Power App? And some people, it may even be a hybrid, which works just as well. Right. If there are no questions, I'm not seeing any in there at the moment, then I'll say thank you very much. Hope you got some benefit from that. And yeah, if you want to get in touch, please email us at 365@solutionshare.co.uk. Give us a call, and please follow our page on LinkedIn or pop over to the website. This